Everyone, very welcome to episode number 5 in our early retirement series. Today we have two really amazing guests, Patsy Carney and Majella R, to tell us their stories through their early retirement journey. As we know, like these have been a series of lunchtime chats that we've had. So we usually try not to go over the 45 minutes, but as we do have two really engaging guests today, we do overrun a little bit today. We're being recorded. It'll be up on our YouTube channel. So but we should kind of get in under the 40-minute mark. I'm going to jump in straight away, guys. Patsy, we're going to start with you. So maybe you just tell us a little bit about your story, where you've come from, and the journey you've gone on to where you are today.
Oh, hi, Cian. Thanks for having me on this today. And myself and Majella would know each other for a good few years at this stage because we come from the same background in terms of pharmaceuticals, I guess. But for the season that's in it, I'm a proud Limerick man. So I'm a Skeeton County Limerick is where I would have come from. Originally, I'm now here in Tramore and in Waterford for many years. But that's my origins, and had some vague notion leaving school that I thought I liked science, and I was lucky enough to pick industrial chemistry and what was NIHE Limerick at the time. So that's my original qualification, is I'm supposed to be an industrial chemist. I didn't spend a whole lot of time at a lab bench, I can tell you, in the course of my career, but started up my working life in Nina, actually, in Tip, company called Roar, as it was called at the time. As I often say, I'm so bloody old, all the pharma companies had only one name. That became Rome, Palanque, Roar, became God knows Sanofi, Aventis, and whatever. And I think finally it would be part of the Sanofi heritage. So did about 3 years there, and then went to the UK to Beecham's, again a single name company, which now would be GSK. So I was in research over there for a number of years in the area of antibiotics. So that was a different to what I was at Anina, which was more the manufacturing side. So combined the two, and then just got lucky. Somebody contacted me from the industry and said, "Are you interested in going home?" And I said, "Well, I'm going home next week," because we happened to be coming home on holidays. And it was home to Philip, and my wife is here from Tramore. We were coming home to Waterford, and the job that was on offer was actually in Waterford. So I came back, and that was my 14 years as with a company again that was called Waterford Pharmaceuticals, that became Norton, that became Ivax, that now today is known as Teva. But that was a very challenging, very worthwhile, tough 14 years. Again, with kids coming along as well, in terms of we 4 kids and all that goes with that. And then pretty high pressure positions that I would have had there on the senior management team and running operations over the course of that 14 years. And I suppose first light bulb moment comes at the age of 40. And another one of the lads that was working with me, Tom Brennan, said, "I'm going down to this open evening on an MBA program for UL. Are you interested?" "I am." I said, "But I don't have time to go to that. Bring me back the stuff." He brought it back. We both wound up on the MBA. And on that MBA, we actually was the first time we thought about creating a company ourselves, because it was an entrepreneurship module on the MBA program. And we took it from there. We actually, we said, "Geez, there might be something in this." And we subsequently submitted our draft business plan, as it was, as part of that MBA. That was in October 2004. I left Ivax as it was in December. Walked around Tramore here with Philippa one morning. I remember our morning walk along the cliff. I said, 2 options here. There was a job being offered to me in Miami, Florida, with the head, the corporation that we were with, or jump and give this a crack with a new company startup. So by the time we finished the walk, we said, "Well, don't really want to take the kids, and I don't really want to go live in Miami, Florida." So I said, "Right, we'll give this a go." So I left at Christmas, and I'm not quite in the same office I was, but not far away. It's just across the hall here in the house. was my first office in EirGen Pharma, as it was. Waved goodbye to the Philip and the kids, and heading off to school in January 2005. Looked down, and there was the boxer looking up at me, and he was employee number 2, I think, because we both headed back upstairs and started working on the business plan. So that turned into the next part of the journey, which was a 10-year roller coaster, established in EirGen, putting funding together, everything that goes with that, stepping off the cliff, which was more to the point. Both Tom and I took every penny we had, and a bit, and shoved it into EirGen Pharma, raised the actual capital, which is a long story, but anyway, we got private investors and BES and all sorts to come in early days, and bootstrapped it, and we were ready to go by the time Tom left IVAX as well in October 2005, and then we tore into the actual establishment of our finalizing business plan and establishment of a facility the following year, and in 6 months we had constructed a pharmaceutical plant from an empty warehouse, basically, to actually an approved facility by the regulatory body to allow us to develop and manufacture effectively oncology products for global markets. That's what we went after. Grew the business over, as I said, a 10-year period, and then and Majella would have been along with us on that particular journey when we hear from Majella, because her company Ivowen were an integral part of the success, certainly the early years of EirGen. And we first inflection point for me was that we would have after 8 years we would have taken in some external funding from Saudi Arabia to Spamaco, a pharma company that came in because we knew we needed some rocket fuel to drive the business on. It had grown to a certain size but needed some capital injection. They came in and they provided the first opportunity for us to de-risk ourselves. And we got a little bit of money off the table. It was enough to basically clear the debts, to be honest, and mortgage, actually, at the time. So there was a little bit of headroom at that stage, which there was none up to that point. So got them on board, but actually, as we were heading into kind of 2014, that stage, or thereabouts, the market for mergers and acquisitions and so on was actually red hot, and we were 10 years in. We're coming up to 10 years in with the original investors and ourselves, and we had to turn around to the Saudis and say, we need to go out and have a look at the market. It's important we have a look, and we went out and had a look at the market. It was red hot. And May 2015, we actually sold the business. So we sold the business to a company called Opco back in Miami, Florida, and there's actually a full circle there, actually. But we sold it. The headline news was we sold it for $135 million. True story behind that. Yeah, there was some cash. It wasn't all cash. There was shares in the company we were buying into. There was the little chunk myself and Tom had left, having brought in the Saudis and all the other, but certainly Tom, I remember a podcast that I heard, or an interview I heard, where Tom Brennan, the lad from Laois, had sold his business for 135 million. So both of us got that lump of 135 million attached around our neck, which the real story was pretty far from that. But anyway.
So that was right, the first leg on your step towards financial independence, and we might jump back in then in a few minutes to that, Patsy, and kind of what happened next. But Majella, it's the same for you. You might just tell us a little about your story and your journey on your career and where it got you to kind of where you are now today.
Thanks, Cian. I'm in a similar industry, or was in a similar Patsy, but I'm by no means the risk taker that Patsy and Tom were. I mean, the bravery that they showed to do that was amazing. I remember walking around Waterford with Patsy and Tom when they were looking for their very first offices, in the arsehole of nowhere, and you can edit that out, but that's not exactly. So I went to DCU, which was NIHE Dublin. I did analytical science, and then I did a master's in Cork, and then I took the ferry literally to Swansea because I was seeing someone and he was doing a PhD in Swansea. So I went to Wales and there was nothing happening in Wales. And I ended up in England in Huntington Life Sciences, which is a preclinical research organization. And no more than Patsy, I was a year in a lab and I went, I am not spending the rest of my life shaking flasks. So I said to my boss, like, we're doing these tests all day, every day. What are they for? Didn't realize at the time, I'm very much a big picture person. So I was like, oh, it's EU regulations. So I took myself down to the Reg Affairs office in the company and I quizzed your man down there. And about a week later, he rang up my boss and he said, can I have your one? So I started in chemical Reg Affairs. I was delighted with myself. And from there, I went to Generics UK, which was then Merck Generics, which is now, oh my God, I don't even know what it is now. In Potter's Bar for about 3 or 4 years. Then I went to a little company called Biodlan in Hitchin. And all the time, like Patsy, I was in England and I couldn't settle there. It just wasn't for me. I wanted to come home. So I negotiated with Biodlan and I moved back to Clonmel because Biodlan had a facility in Clonmel. And at that stage, I was regulatory affairs and project manager for Biodlan, which was generic pharmaceuticals, mainly in the human space, doing a lot of traveling over and back to India, not as much traveling as Tom and Patsy ended up doing, but I did my fair share. But about a year after I arrived, there was a little company in the US called Enron that got into a bit of trouble for creative accounting. And it turned out that our crew were following the same business model. So my job that I had spent 10 or 11 years doing in the UK and wanted to get out and back home was gone in Ireland within a year, and I was panicking. And my mother, God rest her, said, sure, can't you go back to England? And I said, under no circumstances am I going back to England. And that's when I took the biggest risk I ever took, which was set up a company with my colleague Kay O'Shea at the time. And we set up Ivowen in 2002. Just the two of us. We tried to take all of the staff from Biodlan, but they were naturally worried and they stayed and got taken over by Niche Generics. But for the first couple of years, we did all of their regulatory work. Then, as Patsy said, EirGen came on board. I had contacts throughout the world from working at GUK, and I ended up working with a company called AFT Pharmaceuticals in New Zealand, Aspen Pharma in South Africa. So mainly outside of Europe countries trying to get into the European market. So pre-COVID, nobody knew what I did. If anybody asked me, I used to always say, you know, those little leaflets in the back of the tablets that nobody reads, I write them. But after COVID, suddenly everybody was an expert on the European Medicines Agency and how to register a drug. But that's literally what I did. I just registered drugs for people. So did that for years in Clonmel. In about 2010, Kay skedaddled to a little company called, let me think, what can I think? What are their names? EirGen. So I ended up running the business on my own, which is absolutely fine. I had a year of, you know, squeaky pants time. I'm not a risk taker. Anytime I do any of the pension stuff with you, Cian, you know, I come down very low on risk. So this was a very stressful time for me. But anyway, look, we got through it, got bigger and better. And then I had decided that I wanted to get out at about 55. I'm 55 this year. But I had a bit of a health scare in 2019, and then the pandemic hit. And I was still living in Clonmel, but I was married and my husband and I lived in Nina. So I was spending 4 days a week in Clonmel and the weekends in Nina, and it wasn't ideal. And I had an elderly parent that needed care. And so from one thing and another, I said, I need to get back to Nina. So Cian actually came into me and we went down and sat down and looked through our pension. And I know it sounds disingenuous, and Cian has heard this so many times. I know how to run my business and I know how to do regulatory affairs. Don't ask me about money. I'm just, I can't manage it. So he did his fabulous graph and basically said I would be okay till I was 100. And I went, hang on a second, I'm not going to live till I'm 100. And I was like, so can I get out now? And he's like, yeah. And I mean, he had told me this in various guises, but I literally needed to be told, yes, no, you can get out. So within 2 years, I had the business sold to my team. My team bought it from me. Different to Patsy and Tom, I had no interest in going to the market if possible, because I knew that they would want to keep me. You know, as a regulatory affair consultancy, the knowledge base, although my team, of course, are very knowledgeable, but, you know, I was the figurehead, as you were, with a consultancy, and I just didn't want to do that. So I sold it to the team and I got out, and I'm living my best life.
You had that light bulb moment, I suppose, Majella, and I suppose around that, it's like you had it and kind of acted on it very, very fast. And
Yes.
once you made your decision, you made that leap once you were comfortable. So, Patty, do you remember that moment for yourself? Did you have a light bulb moment when you realized, you know, we're actually going to be okay, and you know, we want to get out, or what were the feelings and emotions around that? Is it trepidation? Is it fear? Is it elation?
It was a bit different, because I love hearing that story from Majella, which is nice, quick decision, make it, bang, gone. No, it was a long goodbye for me. 2015 sold the business. Tom and I did stay on, two of us stayed on. But to be honest, we were now working for multinational. Now I got involved in loads of stuff with them because they were doing all sorts of interesting stuff with new products and so on. But I wound up staying on, and I also convinced them to build a new R&D facility in Waterford, and that was coming in at about a $40 million price tag. And I had this flippant sense of responsibility, which was I'll stay on till that's up and running and good to go, which was not the right idea. I should have gone. I couldn't have gone straight away, as Majella says, when you get bought like that. You know, the terms and conditions under the big, massive price tag they put up, one of the terms and conditions is you got to stay on. So, and we were on a 2-year earnout. I should have left the next day, and I didn't. I didn't leave for 4 years. But two parts of this, I would have been, we would have been working with Metis at that stage. I would have got the same graph done. Now, I was pretty convinced anyway. My issue was Philippa wasn't at all, until I'd say about 3-4 versions of this where you kind of went exactly the same, Majella. Listen, 100, like, it's not going to happen, like, and there's enough there, we're grand. And by the way, the kids are fine, and you know, all of that. But it took a good few iterations of that where, you know, I did mad stuff like bought the car and stuff like that after we sold the business, like, which again was connected with Metis because it was a BMW flipping day that they organized, and I saw a lovely shiny flipping
we don't take blame for that at all anyway. So
no. But I did, I bought that, but no, Philippa was still being quite conservative about it. Some of it being her own background, but some of it being we'd been through a few tough years of worrying a lot about finances. So that graph is seismic, but it's the bit about putting the effort in, shove all the information into the likes of yourselves, Cian, and go, right, show me what that looks like. Exactly the same. I'm okay with numbers. I'm probably okay with other people's numbers or business numbers, but when it comes to the numbers that are actually financials related to my own personal life, I do like the idea I can hand them to somebody and say, right, feed back the information to me here with all the assumptions I fit in. So that was one part of it. But then next one came about 2 years into that 4 years. I was walking out one night about 7 or 8 o'clock, around this time of the year, middle of the summer. And I rang Philip on the way out. And I said, well, how are you doing? She said, Graham, says, I'm down here. We are lucky enough to have a property down in the north of Spain. And she says, I'm sitting here looking out the garden. It's a lovely evening here, and gin and tonic and whatever, and sitting down here. It's great. She says, right, it's only one thing wrong. She says, you're not here. And that was it for me. And after that, I was sliding out of there. And now it took me another flipping 2 years, but get out.
It's very interesting that you both said it, but like Patsy, it's such a monumental decision, and particularly for business owners where you build something that's yours and it's you're leaving your baby. So it is, and trying to make that decision on your own. First and foremost is like, do I have enough and am I certain? And then second of all, it's what do I do next though? And that's probably the biggest fear I think a lot of people have. It's what do I, if I walk away today, what will my day look like? So maybe you might both just tell us, what does your third act, so maybe, if we might just jump back to you, it's like, what does your third act look like? Is retirement isn't an end point, it's just a new phase in your life, and you need to have a plan for it. And the reason I have invited you today, I'll just tell a short story before we go to chat, is you really have retired. You've done this the right way. So for anyone watching today, Majella was a little bit late coming on, and she sent me an email saying, my software is updating because I'm actually retired and I'm not on my laptop every day. So I thought that was a great story about what retirement looks like. So yeah, maybe Majella, just if you tell us a little bit more what your third act looks like.
Well, like, as I said, I was out within a year. Obviously with the agreement of my staff and my manager who bought the business, and she's flying at fair dues to her. But everybody I met when I said I was retiring, because I was doing so much, living in Clonmel, working in Clonmel, traveling to Dublin, traveling to South Africa, traveling to New Zealand. They said you'd be bored. In a month's time, you'd be doing something else. Well, I'm telling you now, I'm 3 years in and I'm doing nothing. And by I mean nothing to do with pharmaceuticals, nothing to do with business.
Yeah.
And I was at a Future You conference with Metis 2 years ago. I missed last year's because I was at the World Cup in France.
Yeah.
I was at that, and he had all these speakers up, and about the third or fourth speaker in, I turned to Cian, who was beside me, and I said, Cian, I am the only retired person here. All of these people are supposed to be retired, including Mr. Carney, but they're too busy to new businesses. No, my third act is I'm retired. So
yeah, Majella, you're definitely not doing nothing, because every time I meet up, you're like, the best part of that is you're telling me what's happening next. What's the next trip you're going on? You've done some really exciting things, like going to the World Cup, and plenty more to come as well.
Yeah, so that's it. I like rugby. Like, I mean, I'm not fair dues to Patsy. You saw the shiny BMW. I couldn't give a damn if I never got a new car. It's it's not me. I'm not interested in, I was going to say Birkenstocks. What are those bags? Anyway, bags, whatever. I just want to be able to go to World Cups. I go to Australia at least once a year. I have 2 friends and a niece in Australia. I could go to Australia for 5 weeks now. Do you know what I mean? That for me is, when I went through the thing with you, Cian, the graphy thing, that's all I wanted to know. Can I do that? And well, like Patsy, I was able to pay off my mortgage when the business sold. And once I had a house over my head, then I felt completely safe and secure. I don't have kids, so I don't have to worry about the succession for them. But I do have a husband, so I have to mind him. And he's still working. So I'm gathering around Australia mostly on my own, but he does come for some. But
I think you've undersold yourself a little bit, and Majella, you definitely have one of the most interesting bucket lists I've ever come across, and great. Like, that's what we love to hear. Ultimately, what we do is well, helping people do the things they love most, but getting them to enjoy their money, enjoy that freedom that it brings. And Patsy, you obviously have some very exciting things in your bucket list as well, but your third act looks a little bit different. So maybe you'll just share with us, like, we've seen where you've got to making the exit, but what do things look like now after you finally made the leap?
Yeah, and it is. It's interesting, like, hearing the contrast. I had a bit of bother afterwards, which was, my name is Patsy Carney. I'm CEO of EirGen Pharma. No, you're not. So what am I? So there was a little bit of that afterwards, and then that led to, and I think it's probably one of the questions you're going to ask anyway, what would you do differently? I said yes to a lot of stuff that's up here on the board. Now, some of it is investments that and businesses that I'm involved in or was involved in. But other stuff was, oh, look, the usual, a lot of pro bono stuff. I got involved in regional development stuff down here in the southeast. I'm still involved in that, and things that would have come from that. The businesses I'm involved in, there's a responsibility. I'm an investor. I'm a original founder of some of these companies. So now one of those was one that we subsequently sold again, which was Q1 Scientific, a stability storage business that we had started when we got that money in from Spamaco, from the Saudi investors. And that was actually a very successful business. Again, did 10 years with that one, and we sold that one in 2022. And then we have a veterinary business, which is Trivium Vet, which is I was one of the original founders of that. But by God, I won't profess to be one of the guys in there in the trenches doing the hard work there. That's Louise Grubb, who's the CEO, and Tom got stuck into that one. So I'm glad he got to work away on that one. But there's a few investments like that, small investments that I would have done as well, which is all interesting stuff. But I'm kind of at a point now where I'm actually starting to exit some of those advisory roles and so on that I would have done, because I'd like more time. I have a lot of time, but I'm getting a bit greedy about it. I'd like some more time to do stuff. So like, I mean, I'm not long back from Everest Base Camp. So I mean, that was the big one, because Philip and I hit the big 6-0 this year. So that was our big one this year, was to go to base camp. So that was end of March into April. So and looking forward to nice bit of time in our place in Spain this year as well. So
that's the thing. It's tough, Patsy. Those big things like Everest Base Camp on the bucket list, really hard to do when you're working full time to clear the decks, to say, because this is something we need to do. We need to do it properly. We need to give it time. We don't want to be rushing in and out on kind of a 2-week holiday or something like that. So having that freedom to sit down and say, so we actually have all the time. What are the most important things, and what are the most valuable things to our family? And I think it's very difficult to do if you haven't made that leap. You'd mentioned that there as well about kind of what would you have done differently. You said said yes to a lot of things, and Majella, for yourself, was like anything that you would have done differently in terms of your preparation for the exit, or like any advice you'd have for people watching today, and what they should be doing to put themselves in your position.
Yeah, I would say pay more attention to your pension, because like when I started putting money in the pension, that was not because I wasn't with Metis originally, obviously, because you weren't around. But like my dad always gave me the advice: never be in debt, never a borrower nor a lender be. Obviously, you have to borrow for a house, but everything else I saved up for. And I did without until I had the money, cars, everything. Like I started off with a £1,000 car in the UK, and I slowly worked my way up. Now I bought my first new car the year after Dad died, because I was like, well, feck you, Dad. So that did cost me a little bit, and I did have to borrow a little bit for that, but it didn't last for long. But I always thought, put money into the pension, into a pension. And so when I moved to Metis, I amped up my pension. I was putting in as much as I could. And of course, being a business owner, we do have a little bit more leeway, as in we can put in some of the business money into it as well as our own money. But I mean, the one thing I do understand is the tax efficiency of it. You're paying 40% tax, put in money into the pension, and hopefully get it out. So I would say pay attention to your pension, and it's never too late to start, and it's never too late to amp it up.
And that was only one part of the exit. Like Majella, you obviously got great advice elsewhere from Mary on how to exit the business, and you basically did an MBO with your own staff. You said it wasn't a big exit to a third party, and that was massively important, having that really, really great advice along the way as well.
Yeah, it was, and I was very lucky. My team, they all knew that I was going to get out at 55. I was always very transparent. This wasn't dropped in their laps. And then when Alice was interested in the business, I was more than happy to discuss to her. So we just got it valued, sold it to her, didn't go out. I have no idea. I never asked anybody else for another valuation. I don't want to know. I don't care. If it was to go to someone else, if it was to go to the market, it might have made more money. But as Patsy pointed out, I'd have been there for another 2 or 3 years, and my head would not have been in it. And my business was all head work. Like, it was what's in your head, how to register a drug. Now, I do have a colleague who wants me to do just a small thing called a centralized procedure, which is a pan-European license, like something like the COVID-19 vaccine. He wants me to do that for him, just, because he thinks I might be bored. I said I would do it for him if it comes to anything, but hasn't picked up yet. But that's just a favor.
You said something really interesting there, Majella, about potentially making more going to the market. But I think this comes back to a huge part of having a plan and knowing what's enough. So you had quite a clear objective. Once you knew what your number was, and once you got there, that you were able to make the leap.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
and it's such a common thing, I think, for business owners or for families. It's like it's so hard to make that decision ultimately, even when you know it is. But having a clear goal, knowing what you need to do. Yes, you sense check it, you know, and then you can actually make that leap. And it's not always about more. As we always say, if you don't know what your number is, you know, the answer will always be more. You know,
Yeah.
so it's about knowing what's enough to allow you to do the things you want to do.
And as Patsy, and then
Yeah,
everybody will tell you, and as you get older, time, that's what we're getting less of. You
yeah.
know, your money investment can go up, can go down, blah, blah, blah. Time is only going down. Time is that little,
It's our greatest resource. Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
sand timer is only running out. So you never know. Like a colleague of mine, her husband had a major stroke a year ago, quite a young man, out of the blue, and completely turned their world upside down.
Yeah.
So you have no idea what's going to happen. So we were very lucky, Patsy, and thankfully I'm happy and healthy, and Patsy's healthy, and the families are healthy, and we can do these things. But you just don't know. You know, the plan is to live to 90 anyway, maybe not 100, but you just don't know. So do it.
And Patsy, for you, yeah, any advice that you would give to people who are trying to get onto that early retirement journey, want to exit? Probably you don't have to say put more money into your pension. So Majella wasn't prompted to say that. So, but yeah, like what advice would you say to people? Because it's such a big decision to make.
I think it's to get that is to get that external advice, but to actually articulate what is it you want to do. So that if you can actually be clear on what it is you want, like we just said, if you want time back, right? Well, you're not going to be able to work for the man if that's the way it is, because you're going to get your 2 or 3 weeks holidays a year, and that's it, the same as we all did for flipping 40 years. So if that's not your shtick and you want that more time, well, then you're going to have to plan it, right? So that's somebody where you feed them that information. Now, you know, in my case, it was yourselves. So you feed in that information and you say, right, am I financially independent or am I not? Or what version of financially independent am I? Have I got a reasonable handle on what does it take to keep the show on the road per year? And for us, actually, that was quite surprising. And Majella, you probably found the same. It's not exactly a huge number.
No.
If you're, you know, I did
Not
buy
buying
the
BMWs.
if you're not buying 2 or 3 BMWs a year, and if you're not, you know, a bit myself and Majella a bit like the same like that. Like I get more crack out of being in the East Terrace in Thomond Park of a wet Saturday evening, roaring and bawling at a Munster match, than I would be going off to some fancy 6-star hotel in Dubai or whatever, being waited on hand and foot. That's just not the way we're made up, I suppose. So if you know the kind of goals and dreams that you have, not all of them come with a massive price tag. But if you can feed them into the machine and get the answer out, which says, yeah, based on what it is you want to do, you have financial independence as of now, or whatever version of it that you have, or, you know, whatever income streams that you might still have to consider, but just have a plan. That's it. Just go and get the necessary advice to put that kind of plan together.
It's a very good point, Patsy. I look obviously on the financial side of it, but I think what you said about you need to know where you're trying to get to. You can't start off with I just don't want to work. You know, it's like that's not going to be much of a plan. You need to sit down and ask yourself, what are your values? What are the things you want to do as a family with the people that you love? We can put a number on it, then you can quantify it and you can work backwards. You know, but until that you start that process, you know, you're not really on a journey to financial independence, because now you're just working to accumulate. Guys, we're very close to the end. We've one final question for both of you, and really, really valuable insight from both of you today. Thank you very much. Final question, Majella, I'm going to ask you, what's your definition of real wealth? And is there anything left on your bucket list you want to share with us?
Well, it's a bit of a cliche, health, I suppose. Health and time is real wealth. And that's easy to say because I know I have the financial stability and independence, as you said. But I mean, it's like that hierarchy of needs. So my bottom thing is okay. So yeah, for me, it's health and time, and being able to spend time with my family and my friends and go and see them in Australia if I want to. So that's real wealth for me. What else? I was going to go to the Lions tour, but it's Australia. Even that Munster team had hammered them. So and the prices are ridiculous. Like it's 25 grand or something to go for 7 weeks with the tour. No, I'm not doing that. So I'll find something else. I'll let you know.
We'll have something in the plan for next year. Patsy, same question to you. What's your definition of real wealth, and anything exciting on the booking list you want to share with us?
It's gas. Well, just what Majella said is actually, that kind of sums it up for me. And your Maslow hierarchy of needs is exactly it. If you've got that bit sorted in terms of the financial stability and certainty going forward, well, then it does boil down to, and thanks be to God, I thank every day the pair of us. Well, Philip has a buckety knee at the moment, but we'll get that sorted. To be able to continue to do what we do. We love to run. We love to, we're very active, the pair of us. So to be able to continue to do that, to have 4 kids that are grounded, that are on their way in terms of their journey, which is an interesting other piece in terms of the sort of the Metis story, I guess, is a help and advice around that piece, about that next bit, about trying to help them, but not give them too much help, because they have to find their own way anyway. But as long as they're in a good place and they're away on their journeys, spread the 4 of them to the 4 corners of the world, and then we'll follow them, which is great. And we just follow them around the world. That's kind of is part of the master plan. So the eldest lad, I just said goodbye to him this morning. So he's on his way now, he's taken a sabbatical from work of about 18 months, and he's heading off. So he was in Teva, Majella, by the way. He was in R&D in Teva. So
The only pharmaceutical person in Ireland who has never worked for any iteration of Norton/Teva/Ibex.
You're the only one. Yeah. So that's it. He's gone this morning. So and an interesting point. I was here to say goodbye to him.
Yeah.
It's huge.
I would not be under. In my previous existence, I wouldn't be. So being around for them and to share experiences with them and so on but we're kind of steering him towards South America for next year, because Machu Picchu is on the. That's next.
Say, have you broken it to him that you're joining him along the way? Does he know that yet?
Yeah. As long as we keep in touch, we'll follow him around. So
Right.
so that, I mean, that's one on the bucket list coming up, and the other one is our second guy is getting married. Jesus, this day next year.
Wow.
So that's another big one coming up. And there'll probably be a family ski trip around Christmas as well. They're some of the big ones. And whatever matches are coming up, with the help of God, an All-Ireland final now in a couple of weeks' time. And we'll definitely be there for that.
I'm sure you'll be in Croke Park at least once in July anyway, Patsy.
With the help of God.
So fingers crossed. Guys, thanks so much for your input today. That was absolutely amazing. Really, really great stories. For everyone watching today, we'll have this up on YouTube in a couple of weeks. And if you have any questions for Patsy Majella, please do send them on to us, and we can share them with them. So look, thanks very much. Tune in the next couple of weeks for our next webinar. We'll follow us on LinkedIn. We'll have further updates, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.